Today is trim day. Guys, we're going to talk about how to install window jambs, window casings, and your baseboards so that you can be your own best contractor. Cheers. So I went to the store, picked up a couple of these little trim pieces here. Check this out. It's like a really flat mullion that's really kind of small. It's only 3/4 inch wide. And it kind of looks very similar to the stuff they were using on the trailer, although it's got a little bit more meat, so it'll hold the brad nail better. I'm just gonna line it up and take a couple of quick estimates here. Not worry about being too perfect, and allow the caulking to fill the gap. There's a few more pieces of trim that have to be installed around here that need some paint attention. Obviously, once I put the base in, I've got to do an inside corner still. There is a staple right in the way. Good. Okay, now I'm going to do baseboards two different ways. First way is I'm going to measure and then cut the piece. The second way is I'm going to do the cut and then I'm going to put it in position and then mark it. So there's two different ways you can do this. It all depends on, what you think is more efficient for your own personality. To the wall, to my trim is exactly 31.5. And I want it square here and cut there. So what I would do is I would just mark it 31.5, okay? And I go inside corner and square side. So I'm visualizing my trim. Throw my inside corner on it. And I'll mark my 31.5 from this bottom corner over here. 31.5. Now remember, we're in a trailer here, so the wiring runs along the outside wall. So there is no wires coming from down underneath. So you're perfectly okay to nail this on. And honestly, you want to have a 2-inch nail, the bottom profile, and a 45-degree angle so that you can pick up the wall plate. Because tacking this to the wood paneling doesn't do you any good. And in most cases, just because there's a wall plug here, it doesn't mean there's framing there because they're mounting it to the wall. If you're not happy with your gap, you can throw a nail in it. But what I like to do if I'm not happy with the gap is I'll nail in two different directions. So I'm on an angle this way, and then I'm on an angle the other way. So I've got nails going like this to hold me nice and tight. That way, when I put my caulking on and I paint all that in, I know over time it's not going to end up moving and splitting on me. If you're not in a trailer and you're watching this video, please remember most houses have the wiring for these plugs coming from underneath. So don't go throwing nails in that 3 inches around there, or you might nick your wire. And then you're starting all over again running new wire. Yeah, learn that one the hard way. The next way to do this is how I usually do this is I'll throw on my angle here first, then I'll come back over, and then I'm going to eyeball it and mark it with the pencil. Let's get our trim cut. We can jam that in there nice and tight. Get this down here. Now I can make a pencil mark where I want my blade to go. And what I'm doing is I'm going half and half. I want the blade to cut just a little bit more than off this edge. Mark the surface. You want to cut this flat because the saw just isn't really cutting perfectly. You get what you pay for, and I got a great deal on this saw, but it's causing me a fair amount of headache trying to get a decent cut. So we'll start here. I'm gonna just make sure my base trim is pushed down. Remember, when floating floors, these things they can sit a little high and proud on you. So make sure you put everything back in position. Now to finish off this project, obviously I'm going to need a little caulking. My trim is going to be semi-gloss white. As much as or as little as needed here. Okay. Those little nail holes. We're doing something a little silly today. We're casing this out with a regular size door jamb so that we can get the illusion of a regular house. Remember, this used to have a 1/4 inch piece of paneling, and that's the caulking line right here. Now my new piece of material is 3/4, which is almost the same size as this frame. So there won't be a whole lot of frame left showing when I'm done. And personally, I don't care as long as the window will open, and it will. So what we're looking at here is the existing frame is somewhere between 2 and 5/8. Yeah, 2 3/4. Wow, almost 3. 2 3/4. It's all over the place. There's no rhyme or reason. It's because these windows are installed over that corrugated metal on the outside. If you didn't see the video, we swapped out a bunch of windows in the house already. What we're gonna focus on today is, instead of trying to make a perfect window casement that comes up in contact with this window, I'm just gonna go with stock lumber. It comes 2.5 inches wide. I'm gonna have a bit of a gap. And personally, I don't care. It's so much easier for me to fill that gap with a caulking after the fact than to try to make everything perfect. This is a bedroom after all, right? It's on a south-facing window. In the living room, we had 5 windows in a bay window area. Up there, we took the time to custom cut every one of those jambs and try to make it as perfect as possible. That video is gonna be coming soon. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you want to see that kind of carpentry. But for here, I'm gonna keep my life simple. We're in get it done mode, all right? So I'm gonna just cut a piece, cut a piece, cut a piece. I'm gonna trim this out clockwise. The first one is 30.5. I'm gonna do myself a favor and take a hair off of that. I'm gonna cut it, drop it, measure, cut and drop, and just trim that out. And then we'll come back and put the window casing on. Now, what we see on this window is just a drywall compound from when we did the texture spray. When I'm all said and done here, before I do my caulking, I'm gonna come along with a wet rag and I'll clean this up. But for now, we're looking to go flush with this surface. That is the goal here. And I'll get this measurement. 52 3/4. Now, one of the reasons I love this gun is it doesn't work when there's no nails. This one actually, it stops when there's about 4 nails left, okay? Gives you a chance to reload so you don't have a bunch of nail holes that didn't do anything. That is awesome. 29 5/8. Okay, the last one, we'll push it up here and I'll run the tape past the wood. Get down here and read it in person. 51 7/8 shy, which means just a little bit less than the actual measurement. 51 7/8, and then I'll mark the wood a little bit shy, and that's where I'll put my blade. Yep, shy, all right. Maybe even a little too shy. If you cut short, just split the difference. There's no sense throwing that piece of wood in the garbage. You're gonna be putting caulking up there anyway, because any wood joint like this around a window is gonna expand and contract a little bit. So as long as we're caulking, let's be smart about how we use our wood. So remember, when we're trimming out a window, we wanna have that nice little 1/8 profile, right? Away from the edge. So if you want, you can even draw it in if it makes it easier for you to measure. Right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna measure from here, right? Put the tip of that right into that wood to here. What I end up with is 29 3/8. Okay? So we'll take that measurement, write it down before we forget. Now, we also have to cut this wood so that we miter the outside corner. So when you think about it, this intersection here, it's gonna be 2 pieces of wood that goes down here like this. The outside point is equal to the width of this trim on each side. So it's 2 1/4, so we have to add 4 1/2. So plus 4 1/2, and let's translate that, is going to mean 4/8. Okay? So now I got 4, there's 33, and 4/8 is 7/8. 33 and 7/8. I'll take that cut, I'll miter the joints, and I'll come back to install it. From the pencil mark to pencil mark is 29 3/8. 2 pieces of this trim at 2 1/4 makes 4 1/2. Translate that to the same denominator, so it's 4/8. So then I can add that all together to get 33 and 7/8. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a little bit of my pencil mark still showing. What I'm looking for here is to line my blade up. They come right off this tip here. Okay? So I'll cut. Get a look at how much I have to move it over. Slide my wood over and try to cut again. Now I'm close, but not quite. So I've got my hand here. I'll just take my thumb and give it a little bit of a nudge. That's it. Using the guide, the fence guide here with your hand, your thumb can move that back and forth a full quarter. So that's how I set it up. So then I can take a cut, a little nudge, pull it back and forth. Perfect every time. Same thing here. We're looking to come right off this corner. This one's a little easier to line up. Now, that's not in the corner. That actually has a 1/16 of a return. So I know I have to slide it over. So same thing, I just get a little bit of a nudge here. Okay. Now we're using the same philosophy here. I've still got the 2-inch nails in my gun. So I'm not shooting anywhere near the jamb because I don't want to have that rebound back in. So I'm setting this on my pencil line for my depth. And I'm moving my intersection right there where that pencil mark is. Check my other side. I have just a hair extra, so I'll split the difference. I like that. That's consistent. Okay. And I know there's wood here. And I know there's wood here. Remember, when they're framing a wall, there's always a piece of wood framed right next to the jamb. Okay? So that's a great place to put the first two. Now, it's established, I can measure from here to this point, okay, on both sides, and they should be the same, give or take. So I'll just set it on there, and I get to 52 1/4, okay? Now remember, when you're measuring something from the outside, the tape end moves. That's an accurate measurement. When you're measuring from the inside, this slides, and it makes that adjustment for the thickness of itself. So you can measure into something or off of something and you get an exact measurement. If your end of your tape isn't moving the same thickness as the metal here, it's time to get a new tape. 52, I'm gonna go a little bit more than 1/4. 52 3/8. So, all of our focus is down here when we're doing this. We want to line up our outside corner to be absolutely perfect. One of the easiest ways to do that, just like that. Don't even look at what's going on up top. As long as that nail isn't sunk in here nice and close to the bottom, we're going to take a look at this now. One nail through the side. Those are nice and flush. Now, wood bends. Now, because everything here is warped, the jamb, the building, maybe the trim, you can nail as you want to go, leaving that consistent gap. Okay, we're going to not nail the very top because, as you can see, this trim can be manipulated still on both sides. Now we're going to take an outside corner to outside corner measurement, which is 33 5/8. Because I know this is fighting me, I added just a hair so I can pull this one out of the way to set it in properly. I'm liking the size of this. I'm gonna have to pull this trim to set it down. That's fine. The first thing I'm gonna do is come over here and try to establish this outside corner to be flush. 1 1/4 nail works every time. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with this. Okay. Now I gotta work on this. Now I'm gonna just pull this down. Close this gap up a little bit. Now there's no need for me to run around putting a bunch of nails on the outside unless I got a huge gap. I do have a bit of a gap here. We're gonna see if we can close that up with a couple of nails. I just don't know if there's anything there for this to bite into. Okay. That seemed to have a nice effect. All right, good. Now the only thing left on any window trim is to make sure that the trim is nailed every 8 to 10 inches into the jamb. because we're gonna add caulking in these joints and we don't want it separating. So having that all pinned up makes a world of difference. In this scenario, what we're not concerned about is there a gap up here or there or underneath? No one's ever gonna see that, okay? So don't add extra nails just for the sake of doing it, because you're adding extra holes that need to be filled, right? An extra potential for a nail to pop out or the head to be raised and look like garbage when you paint. You can still operate the window, and from across the room, it'll look pretty. I'm not even gonna bother caulking this up. To be honest with you, I think caulking will take away from it and make it look ugly. It's better for me to just leave the gaps. It's a commercial brown window. Maybe someday down the road, I'll come over here and I'll change that window out, okay? And then we'll have to redo the jamb and everything anyway. But down here in Florida, really the most important goal with a window is keeps the water out and keeps out the birds. We don't worry too much about the thermodynamic of it. Now we're gonna caulk this sucker, all right? Before we paint, let it set up. We're just gonna fill that gap here so that it's concave. And this is preparing for paint now. So if you see gaps like this, it's not done. It's not ready. Leave a little bit more material on the surface, okay? And then lightly fill that up. We're gonna throw a bead on the surface, okay? And then lightly, don't overpress it so that it stays there. Take the extra material, rub it into a nail hole. Remember, you're always better to pull the caulking gun than push it. All right, now there's excess, right? So I'm gonna use it to fill a nail hole. And this is great, okay? Well, then when I run out, what do? Well, here's how the caulking gun works as a whole. You punch this and you can feel the resistance. Now there's pressure. Not enough pressure to bring any material up. So when I'm holding the gun, I can just go like this. Little squeeze, a little dollop, okay? That's how I can control this for going around filling all my joints. Little squeeze, little dollop. I can do this about 10 times before I have to reset the pressure on the gun. If you take the pressure off the gun and you bring it back to where it's just pressurized, you have control over how much caulking is coming out of that gun and when and where you want it. A lot of guys have a hard time using a caulking gun effectively because they're always removing the pressure and bringing the pressure back, and then they get too much material on their finger to fill a nail hole. This little squeeze with the left hand and then pick it up with the right hand, that works really, really well. I mean, all we're doing is filling a nail hole. So if you put a dollop on your finger that's the same size as that nail hole, you aren't gonna have a bunch of caulking left all over your casing that you have to clean off before you can paint. Just gonna rub in a little bit of material in there for that. Beautiful, ready for paint.